What is up, you guys? Welcome back to Twink Revolution. I'm Sam.
I'm Gian.
And, yeah. How are you doing, Gian?
Oh, good. Really just loving having so many rules to follow in my life. It's really,
so many.
Yeah, wear this mask. Don't park your car here.
Don't call people slurs. They just want the world from us now.
Right, I cannot keep up at all, honestly. The demands people place upon me, it's just unreasonable. Don't they know there's a pandemic on?
Yeah, and now they're
I can't follow simple instructions.
And now they're assigning us homework. We did in our last live stream, which if you didn't know, we're on YouTube. If you're not subscribe.
Yeah, we kind of drunk live stream, usually quite impromptu.
Are you implying people do sober live streams?
I'm sure it's been done before.
Well, then no one watches those. But we talked a lot about anarchism, coincidentally.
We had a friend of the pod, David, who's one thin line on Twitter, sort of stopped by somewhat
digitally,
unexpectedly. Yeah, digitally stopped by. And we had a really interesting conversation about sort of just like the individualized foundations of some of these ideologies. Not the funny thing is it's not a judgment per se.
Yeah, we're not being like, oh, the anarchists or bad people. And it's like, no, we just have a disagreement on how we view like social dynamics and like
right, like what are the actual salient sort of like social relations that are determining the problems we find, right? And like therefore that would sort of tell us a lot about how we might set about doing something about them. And if we just sort of disagree on those, but actually fundamentally agree on many of the ends, then that's cool. You're not a bad person. You're just wrong. And I hope we would be granted the same, the same leeway, at least for people to say like, yeah, no, you're not necessarily a bad person just because you have parsed the world differently. We're
not personally attacking anyone. We're just having a disagreement around tactics and strategy. So this is not like if you're an anarchist listener. Thanks for listening.
We love you. That's fine.
We have libertarian listeners, and we still will say critical things of ideas of libertarianism, or like liberal listeners or conservatives. Like we're not going to hold back to like prevent people getting hurt feelings. Don't take it so personal.
Yeah, soften up. Don't soften. Harden up, snowflake.
Yeah,
you need a safe space. You need to go cry.
But I think one of the critiques, because they didn't offer like a certain
you should fill in that for all that aside, right? We're not personally calling out any of our anarchist listeners, except the motherfuckers who came after us for not having done the work.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, I was an anarchist for 3 years. I've read out like most of the books.
Like tedious 3 years that must have been.
Yeah, it was amazing, great for mental health. But like they recommended in the comments on
they demanded. They said it was very embarrassing how we didn't understand even the basics of anarchism.
So they
said we must read.
They recommended the FAQ, Anarchist FAQ, which I own and I've read. I think twice now. So that's fun. I've read Kropotkin, I've read Proudhon, I've read parts of Bakunin. So it's like this idea that we just didn't read enough. It's like
you didn't do the work.
I've read more anarchist shit than I've read of like Marx or like anyone else. So it's like, yes, I wasn't talking out of my ass. I was talking out in a way like from my personal reflection on like
it's
anarchism.
What did you used to think? I mean, and the fact that these ideas put you in good standing with sort of other anarchists is not to say yes, all anarchists think this way or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is funny to me always when there's assigned reading from an argument. It's just like instead of actually just like saying like, yo, your understanding of, I don't know, some anarchist view of the labor relation is wrong or something. Just, saying like, you're wrong. You've just direct contradiction.
It's a lazy
is one thing, but saying, no, here's a 10,000 fucking page tedious FAQ, which I have also read parts of for the record.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not blundering into this. But yeah, I know it's just, the finer points of like, Bakunin's specific arguments, are really important to understanding why it's just embarrassing to watch us. I hope it's embarrassing to listen to us in general, honestly. Even when we talk about shit we know about.
I can't even watch our videos because I just find myself so awkward. So anyone who can watch me and doesn't feel awkward, that's good.
Yeah, kudos. Yeah.
But also, like, that's a self-reflection thing. That's not probably everyone else's perception. We've gone up.
No, this is universal.
We've been going up on subscriptions. So people love the awkwardness, or
it's a sort of, there's a fetishized version of the awkwardness.
Yeah, it's like a mukbang, but for like awkwardness.
Speaking of awkward, it's almost June, and June
What's that
is
mean?
International Pride Month. And
wait. I haven't heard of this. What is this?
Well, you see, when a man loves another man very much and can convince him to host, then they get together and they paint some rainbow flags on their faces, and then buy things.
Oh, okay.
Because what I think is most interesting about this is June is a time when corporate America really sort of rolls into gear with all their marketing campaigns, but COVID-19 being what it is has put a bit of a dampener on it, and therefore we're now getting to see the sort of the impotent spurting of gay like pinkwashing campaigns from America's most beloved corporations, but they have nowhere to go. They're getting blueballed here, and it just gets more and more bizarre by the day.
So I completely forgot you're even getting close to Pride because I don't give a shit. I don't find a strong fondness for like the LGBT rights movement or like Pride or anything. Like I don't view it as like the essential aspect of my identity.
Wow, that's your privilege talking.
It's my privilege, yeah. I'm the type that's not like every vacation must be a circuit party in like Ibiza or like I don't know.
We're gonna make an bitch.
Berlin or some shit. Like that's not my idea of a fun time.
Missing out.
I can do drugs at home. I don't need to go to like a foreign country and do like Molly in a nightclub.
I can get antibiotic resistant gonorrhea right here in San Francisco without having to travel.
Like, why would I do that? Like, I'd rather go to like Iran or something. Have some risk in life.
And then do drugs and circuit parties there, right?
Yeah, find that a gay porn star like that we saw on Twitter like a few years back got like arrested by the Iranian state.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's still alive. But I didn't realize it was happening until someone I know from, I'm not going to mention names, but they work at Apple, which I know lots of people that work at Apple. So if you listen and you think it's you, maybe it's not you.
Could be anybody.
But it was the Apple Watch Pride edition. And it was the article was, as Pride goes virtual, Apple Watch Pride edition helps community and advocacy continue worldwide because they're donating part of this money to a bunch of fucking like stupid charity group. No, not stupid. Some of them are fine. A bunch of like PMC crap hole LGBT organizations that I don't care about. And everyone was like so excited. I'm like, oh, I bought this one. I'm like, you can afford. We probably already own an Apple Watch. Like, you're buying more just because it's rainbow now. Like, I thought it was.
Wait, you didn't? Sorry, I put 2 on pre-order. Did I do wrong? Sorry.
Yeah, return them. I don't like the Apple Watch, and I'm like the person who had a laptop for like almost like 6 years until it like literally could not function anymore. Like, I don't like this whole.
You don't really do consumer electronics as pleasure, do you?
No, I do like food as pleasure, or like Molly. No, I'm just kidding. But that's like pleasure, no matter how much you try to not have pleasure. So it's what the drug does. We're giving you a lesson on proper drug use this episode.
We're doing harm reduction or something.
Yeah.
See, I don't think the Apple Watch. I received one as a gift, and I quite like it, honestly.
No, it's fine.
No, I'm not rushing out to get a Pride strap for it or a
Oh, you take the strap off, right?
Yeah, you can change the straps on them.
Oh, so not buying a full Apple Watch.
No, these ones are. The ones they are advertising is that you buy the Pride edition and it comes with a special, because the watch faces are sort of like aftermarket app downloads in some sense.
Yeah.
So I think it might be free, but you still have to you have to want the Pride the Pride watch face, the digital watch face, and then you can buy the strap, or you can buy the whole kit, which I'm sure comes in rainbow regalia, and involves this donation to Joe Biden and the Human Rights Campaign, and like fucking, I don't know, just fucking Cato Institute or something, whoever they donate money to.
I'm gonna buy a really expensive watch. I'm just gonna buy like a shitty like gold watch. At least it makes you look kind of nice, but I would never use because I have a phone to look at the time, and I forgot how to read clocks.
You also have like tiny wrists.
I have very tiny wrists.
So like you're not like men's watches are not for you.
No.
You are.
I have slight wrists.
You're not. Fluoride wrists or something. You're not certainly shopping in the men's watch section. Honestly, the women's watch section might be out of it. You might be into the children's section. For
I kind of wish I was like actually 6 foot like I was promised, because I have the perfect body to be like a runway model. Like I'm just like real thin, and like if I was like the height my doctors told me I could just be like, I'd get the job.
Yeah.
I have like
Sam
features.
is not 6 foot
I'm
for the
5'7".
record.
So
yeah. So there's a little bit of a gap going on there.
Yeah, science is a lie. This is why I don't wear masks anymore. No, I'm just kidding.
You can add that to the fan fiction, by the way.
So then I saw a second.
Wait, sorry, I'm still in the fan fiction. Just because our Reddit, our subreddit, it exists now. It's it's called Twink Revolution, and it's I'm disappointed at the lack of erotic fan fiction, honestly.
Get on it.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Come on.
Yeah. If you're on Reddit, get on the Twink Revolution subreddit and start posting your best your best erotic fan fiction, please.
Like, we're not gonna do the subreddit because like I don't know how to do Reddit, so, and Gina doesn't really care.
Yeah, no, it's kind of cringe, honestly.
This isn't for us. If we just post stuff, we're just gonna get like downvoted and blocked.
Yeah, nobody likes us who listens to this. It's just but if you're sort of sublimating an erotic thrill in listening to this, then please channel that into something I can at least sort of read and enjoy.
Yeah. So the next one I saw was Skittles, and they the special edition Skittles, and they're all white.
That's racist.
It's so racist. Because
what the fuck?
They basically say for their slogan, the only place for a rainbow this month is for Pride. And I'm like, go eat your ass. Like, shut the fuck up. Like,
taste the rainbow, bitches. We're doing white supremacy now.
I want to do some like shit flavored like Skittles. That's probably even like better. Like, I don't know.
I've
Did you not look at the?
I didn't look at the fucking link. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna show you because
I was behind the curve on this one.
It's so.
I am horrified.
It's like for once eat like colorless Skittles.
Oh my god, they look like medicine. These look like pharmaceuticals.
Is it chocolate like gray white too? Like
Skittles don't have chocolate. Those are M&Ms.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm making M&Ms.
Yeah.
Is the whatever the fuck's in the middle of a Skittle like also gray?
Sweet goo.
It's literally just sugar pills.
Yeah. These are the Skittles placebo edition.
I'd rather take the sugar pills and like birth control than like whatever the fuck this is.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to fucking homeopathy or something. So you'd be better off. This is horrifying. But I honestly think that we should address head on their virulent white supremacy.
Yeah.
Like you were telling me that their vision of Pride Month is just an all white, just exclusively white, no variation, no diversity.
Yeah.
That's their vision of the future. Wow, fuck these people. They're canceled.
Yeah, they're racist.
This is racism, man.
Skittles is a racist company, and if you
boycotting,
keep buying from them, you're also racist.
Yep.
Actually, everyone's racist, and you should all go fuck yourselves.
Yeah. Do the work, sweaty.
So the last one was wasn't in the U.S. It was a Sprite ad in Argentina, and for one, like they never show Sprite in the whole 2-minute fucking short film episode. Like you don't know what's a Sprite commercial until like the very end, and it's like, what the fuck does this have to do?
It's overcooked as well as like a frustrated film student production. It's relatively well produced, and I can't remember what's happening. There's like
3 different people, and it's like different LGBT people, and like their families like accepting them and stuff, and that's all it is.
Oh yeah, so there's like somebody binding their chest, and like they're I think it's like a mother or grandmother or something is helping them to bind, which is like cute. That's cute and endearing, whatever. And then there's I can't remember, some like two male friends like no, dressing in drag or something.
There's no gays in this.
Oh, thank God.
So
it's like they've learned the lesson that fucking Skittles didn't learn.
This is maybe a controversial opinion, but I know you're all gonna get it.
Let me just mark down the timestamp so I know what to trim out.
At least for like this year's Pride, I've noticed it's been highlighting everyone besides gays and lesbians. Like I've literally seen like, oh, you're all mentioned, but they just never actually say gays or lesbians.
Yeah, I mean it's no, but attendance. I think attendance has been declining since there was full and enthusiastic endorsement and welcoming into the establishment.
But I think if you're gonna do like an LGBT anything, you should definitely mention gays and lesbians. The vast majority.
Wow, trying to center yourself in this discussion. You're doing a cis heteropatriarchy.
It's like a rising trend. You see more figures, including especially lesbians, like talking about if they're being kicked out of spaces. Like I think
lesbians, I think, are having certainly a rough time on this one.
But the gays get it as well before this like crackdown on lesbians, where like they're no longer even like considered oppressed. I don't want to be considered oppressed, but like to the LGBT discourse, they're like getting removed from seats of like representation because they're too privileged now. It's like
lesbians? Who needs them?
Like what's the point of the movement then? Like so you can have a bunch of like Jamil queer people like being the face of the movement.
Center completely indistinguishable from heterosexual queer voices.
Yeah.
This is your movement, America. You are doing the gay rights.
Like I'm sorry, but this is complete bullshit. Like like it's so stupid because it's no longer even about like moving anything forward for like the actual issues facing.
No, it's about selling Sprite.
And it's like, oh, like the only lesbian talk at like Sydney Mardi Gras was canceled because someone said something that was like controversial to like the PMC classes, and they had like a trans like lesbian on there and stuff, and they canceled the whole thing. The only lesbian thing, and then there was like no lesbian floats.
Not technically the only lesbian then, but you're saying the only cis lesbian.
No, there was a 3-person lesbian talk, and they canceled it because of one person.
Oh, sorry, on the panel.
Was only other one lesbians. During the whole thing.
Sorry, I thought you were being turfy inadvertently.
No,
or something. Oh, okay.
They were together.
Sorry. Okay, so there were multiple lesbians, some of whom were trans and some of whom were cis, and they all got canceled.
Just one of them.
Oh, okay.
And they canceled the whole thing.
Right.
Well, and it's like this movement's no longer
representation matters.
The movement's no longer for like regular. I mean, it wasn't really from like ever since like it kind of got picked up by the establishment, but it's not longer for like regular working.
Well, gays and lesbians. It never was. I mean, the liberal rights framework is.
It started out as like some set of material demands. I think.
But now I don't know if it did. I think it came up with legal demands. The material demands were always pushed to one side.
Yeah.
Precisely because it's like, hey, you can't talk about that right now because we're busy fighting for marriage. And yeah, I don't know. So the problem is that it's all like mask off shit at this point in terms of like we know who it's for. There's a very robust and well developed nonprofit industry that is built around it.
Yeah.
And the rush to the margins, which is not to say those who sit at the margins are not do not have legitimate grievances and real material issues to contend with.
Yeah.
But honestly, like the fucking HRC and SF Pride or whatever they're not the ones who are going to be pushing that one.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Sorry, like they're not your friends.
I also don't find it like a place I'd want to be a part of or like a community I find personally enchanting. I find it to be a quite hostile place. Like the more
that's just your privilege talking. You don't need this. You don't need a 6-figure nonprofit job.
Yeah.
So you're just that's your privilege talking.
But it's like the contradiction of like the more open and like inclusive you are, the more hostile these groups are, and it's like I don't know. I'm not gonna waste my time. Like I don't know. Like when I was like a teenager, when gay marriage happened, I was like saw it on my phone. I was like, cool. I don't fucking care. Like it was just did not enthuse me.
Oh
like,
yeah, I went and drank in the streets just because it was.
Yeah, but
partying.
you would drink in the streets regardless.
Yeah, it wasn't different than the other day.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, no, I do think the solidarity breaking in the LGBT movement kind of cuts two ways. You see, there's the sort of pretty wacky, and honestly pretty vile, like the LGB movement people,
Mm-hmm.
the ones who are sort of saying that like whatever struggles of trans people exists, that's not our fight. Like we don't want any part of that. And they will resort to some rhetoric that is not to my personal taste. I think there's like there are arguments to be had about like the way we talk about ourselves as a community or whatever, and there's all sorts of internal contradictions and fights to work out.
Yeah.
But resorting to just like honestly just like shitting on trans people and calling them men in dresses or whatever, which is what these people do, is fucking revolting. So I think that's sort of one end of that reaction. The other end of the reaction though is a community that becomes fixated on like sort of finding like put it this way, if oppression does not exist, we must invent it.
Yes.
And rather than actually focusing on maybe the material struggles that are in front of us, which require some real fucking bonds of solidarity and some real like actual wielding of power and an actual conflict in order to fight for. Say something like housing. Pick an issue. Housing, employment, right? And particularly those ones which if you are the kind of person who is most motivated by like the suffering or by your concern for, say, like trans women of color, then you like cool. Like these are the things. These would be the things that would mean like the difference between life and death for many people. Well, no, fuck that. Because instead what you can do is you can invent a kind of marginalization which is about, I don't know, like white cis gay leftists, us. We're doing the real violence, right? We're doing the real harm.
Well, I'm also
and it would, and that's not to say, right, it's like sure, like the whatever fight the power, man, but I know it's a self-fulfilling prophecy whereby why fight the real battles when you can just make one up and then tilt at windmills.
I'm so over this endless list of like identities before every single thing as well. Like everyone needs housing. Like I'm socialist.
Nazis don't, Sam. Wow, you actually just did a strasserism.
But like it's so like why make it so focused on like an extremely small group when like everyone needs housing? Like I will be there on the front lines being like, oh, if someone's like housing for everyone besides like trans people, then I'm like, yes, that's fucking awful.
Yeah,
but that's not what's happening.
If somebody's saying that, we will go kick their asses.
Instead, it's like, oh, we should only focus on housing for certain small subsects based on like merit-based testing. Like, oh, for LGBT people or like poor people under this amount. It's like, no, I just want everyone to have housing. I don't give a fuck like what the fuck you identify as or what you do in your personal life.
Well,
like,
but you're erasing there. You can't. I mean, it's the joke format, which is what is it? It's like Twitter joke format is basically like good morning to everyone except TERFs or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is like, no, you can think those people are shitty. But to actually wish death upon them is I know pretty strong meat. I don't need to be the person defending these. It's simply a retreat to a position of essentially a kind of like, I like cool. Those battles are going to play out, and these conflicts are real conflicts that are going to happen. But it turns out, separate from those, we probably shouldn't wield market logic.
Yeah.
And wield the actual provision of like material safety.
Also, good
security.
Luck getting acceptance from these people you call like TERFs or homophobes when you literally call for the removal of their material conditions. Like, that's their lifeline. And you're like, oh, we should get them fired, or we should get them kicked out of their tenants. Like, oh, so you're wishing death on them. Like, that's not a way that you're going to convince anyone to come to your side. They're going to probably even be more like against your group.
Well, I don't know about the specifics in these situations because I honestly do not follow it. But you've certainly seen in some of these sort of more like 80s anti-fascist movements, right? Where the problem is that once you actually remove people's material support, the only place they have to go is into the network of people who essentially are then like professional fascists, say, or neo-Nazis or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's the case here. I honestly think it's about hewing to a certain principle, which is not a very nice one. It's a little bit like the free speech one or something, where you're simply saying like, yeah, I'm gonna have to swallow some shit I really don't like.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not doing it because I'm remove it from the logic of to say that somebody actually deserves, say, housing, irrespective of how terrible I think they are, is the higher principle. Yeah. In the same way that they deserve, to not maybe suffer government suppression of their speech, no matter how awful I think that speech is. And the test of the principle is always on the people you think are awful. It's very easy to say, me and my friends should all have housing. Cool. That's a pretty uncontroversial statement. That's not where the actual political contest takes place.
This is why we differ from liberals for many reasons, but like they don't believe that everyone deserves these things. It's still meritocracy and stuff. And I think everyone like groups I find horrible, like Westboro Baptist members, I think should have free healthcare.
I think they should have
education.
giant houses too. I think they get extra good houses.
But like I want
to publicly fund their signs actually because they've brought me a lot of joy over the years.
But I'm like, I think everyone should have like the material needs to survive. Like I don't want to start adding in limitations, and I don't wish people should like suffering. Like that's sick. You're on their level then. Like I
right.
We're better than that.
And the problem is, I feel like we always, any example we were to choose here of like people you would sort of not deny, housing and food to or whatever, we've probably been called. So let's pick a group that is just so beyond the pale and so reprehensible as to just be they're irredeemable. I think everybody can agree they're bad. Radlibs. Radlibs, I think they should even be allowed housing. And
you're so generous.
I know. I look at that's how broad-minded I am. But somebody else doesn't think these values should necessarily entitle you to life. What was going on? Something was going on in the Levant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm gonna backtrack to get a broader picture.
Sorry, was that a clanging segue?
It was okay. You tried your best.
5 out of 10.
So in Iraq, wonderful liberated country. I joke. The Canadian and British embassies decided to, on International Day against like homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia, raise the pride flag, which like to most people probably like, oh, that's so cool, like that's amazing, like they're doing so much. And in response, the like Salafi jihadist groups that gained power after the Iraq invasion went on a witch hunt for gays, and 2 have already been murdered. Turns out having like one of your former colonizers posting a flag knowing it'll be antagonistic to a lot of like Islamist and right-wing groups is not it's very selfish. It's a very selfish act.
I mean, I assume in this case it was almost a deliberate provocation.
Totally. I mean, this is what the discourse is, and like, I mean, it's a Boris Johnson like government right now. You think he's like, oh, I love the gays because of the gays. It's like, oh, like he's probably not a fan of the Muslims or whatever. And it's
right.
Like,
I mean, they regard. Yes, if your entire project is to regard anybody who lives in that part of the world generally as just sort of savages and barbarians, which is largely the position that they take, then yeah, I mean the chance to sort of wind them up
Yeah.
and have some segments in that society, and whatever you can argue about it, whether it's a big part of the society or a tiny sliver of the society, whatever. But some part of that society then kind of take you up on your challenge there.
Yeah.
Lo and fucking behold, guys, you've really made LGBT rights, a universal issue here. You've really done good things.
Like, they didn't accomplish anything. This is the complete bullshit that we see in the U.S. too. Is like, oh, I hope the governor raised the pride flag. Like, who cares? Like, guess what? The raising the pride flag is just a distraction, so they don't need to give you like healthcare or like housing.
Yeah, I really hope as I'm evicted, there's a like everyone is welcome here sticker on the eviction notice.
Like, I'd rather have someone just never acknowledge us and just give us what I need to like live and thrive, versus like this fucked up woke signaling that like I'm pretty sure these like data Rocky gays who were like shot and thrown off roofs, I'm pretty sure they felt really liberated by their like times of solidarity.
Proud.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they love that troops are still fucking bombing this country. Like, I think it was Mila, like in our last episode, like turns out the bombs still hit the gay people. Like the bombs don't just avoid the gays, not yet.
No, the Raytheon pride themed bombs will be smart bombs in that way. They're smart and they embrace diversity.
Like there is definitely a very like anti-gay and bi and whatever attitude in Iraq, but also like this isn't for Western foreign countries to decide when they should change. That's for like the country to, and the gays like in a lot of places being more private's probably the option a lot of them probably would choose at the moment, because they'd rather not be witch hunted by like a country that's very unstable, and that's often like they go after the groups that often get persecuted.
Yeah, you couldn't tell me that that for whatever nascent LGBT rights groups are there on the ground, advocating for whatever sort of improvements in conditions they can negotiate given the conditions in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine that they sort of wake up, see the pride flag flying over the British embassy, and go, "Gee, thank you. I'm so glad you did that."
Yeah.
I could be wrong here. I'm just gonna guess that to the extent that forcing it to a head is, yeah, sure, you're doing it's #brave, but it's not like this is even a sort of a politically neutral act when, as you say, it comes from the country, one of essentially two countries that spearheaded that particular invasion.
Yeah.
Most of the could be what I would choose.
Most of these countries have like the origin of like the criminalization from the colonizers,
from
like,
Britain specifically, not even just the colonizers. Literally, Britain did this.
Yes. So it's like the complete irony of like, oh, we're gonna colonize you and enforce our bourgeois religious morals into your country and criminalize it. Because in the Ottoman Empire, it wasn't criminalized; it was decriminalized actually. But they, when it fell apart and got taken over, they're like, oh, we're gonna impose our restrictions on gay sex and stuff.
Right,
and now
16th century sodomy laws
that
from the British Empire.
Now they kicked them out. They're using the very opposite thing of what they're responsible for to legitimize like their actions in these countries. Like, it's so twisted.
But the problem is, if people were wanting to take a bad faith reading of the point you're making there, they would say, well, it sounds like you're blaming the good guys here, right? I mean,
no,
it's
fuck the Islamists, but that's not.
Yeah, fuck them.
That's obvious,
right?
Like,
well, you say it's obvious, but I feel like people are willing to be sort of obstinately and deliberately deaf to that particular point.
Okay, well, let me rephrase that. It's obvious to any regular person. I don't mean not honest, like any regular working person who's like, yeah, that's not a thing I want. It's to the people who have to be woke as shit and don't understand the complexities of like the Middle East and how it vastly differs from like the West and religious aspects and stuff. The West is primarily secular. Like, it's not a region filled with like Islamists who are trying to make the whole country like fucking Saudi Arabia. Like,
well, and I mean, by comparison, I would say that if the I don't know, Saudi embassy flew the fucking, I don't know, ISIS flag,
yeah,
in downtown DC or something, there'll be some fucking horrible things would come from that too. Not saying they're gonna do it, simply saying like this is like it's simply when you're sort of using like state power as an instrument of a certain kind of cultural domination. You just good things are probably not going to happen.
Well,
there are plenty of ways you can advocate in directions.
I think you say that, but I knew a person who, back in my libertarian days, Missouri, and they burned an ISIS flag on campus, and they got a ton of hate from leftists. The left. I'm using leftists in a very broad, like
leftoids.
But they were upset about it and calling it Islamophobic. I'm like, this is the fucking ISIS flag, you dumbasses. Like,
if there was ever like a more cartoonishly evil villain,
yeah,
and like you will find, listeners of the pod will notice. I will often go back to ISIS as sort of a good example. Nazis are a bad example because people don't understand like just how cartoonishly evil they were.
Yeah.
Anymore, because they think that I don't know, casual racism and the actual systematic and automated extermination of the Jews in Europe was these are just equivalent things or whatever. Yeah. But ISIS is literally a good target. I mean, they're just cartoonishly evil.
Well, sadly,
there's nothing nice to say about them. I've not like there's nothing.
Well, sadly, I see lots of democratic socialists and people who identify as like certain sects of like anarchists and Trotskyists be like, I mean Trotsky's in a very broad term, like self-identified.
Like left oppositionists.
I don't know what that even means in modern day. But will literally defend Salafists in like the Middle East because they just are, I don't know, maybe brain dead or something.
But it's a kind of edgelord tendency applied to, the legitimate concerns of sort of imperialism, right? It's actually hard to parse some of this stuff, but that's why I feel like I'm not really on shaky ground to simply say, if you wanted just if you just wanted a cartoonishly evil one. I mean, they're incredibly right wing, even within the gamut of, say, conservative, extremely conservative Islam, and then their treatment of pretty much anybody, horrible. It's not like they're fighting some anti-imperialist project. They're just bad. And yet, why is that not an example you could use? It's horrible.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
There's like some misfiring going on here, a tendency to want to believe in the underdog or something. But please take my word for it. They're really, really just as villainously evil as you can imagine.
Yeah, I shouldn't even have to say like, oh, of course the Islamists were bad. Like that's just pretty fucking obvious. Like if I shouldn't need to say that. Like for one, I'm a gay person. Like I'm not a friend of like ISIS. They want to like kill me. Like they're not a friend to like women's equality or like secularism or socialism.
It's not even a mixed bag. It's not like you can even be like, okay, yes, they have some regressive social views, but they're good on.
They hate everything I support. They hate communism. They hate
rabidly anti-communist. It's like, what is the nice thing? Like you couldn't even. And the thing is, even some of these like horrible regimes, right? You might be able to sort of use the rather droll, like, well, at least they made the trains run on time. They didn't. They destroyed modern society. In any place they went to, they were just like, society collapsed.
These Salafist groups just like burned like endless fields in Syria when there's already getting like bread shortages, which like the empire is saying like, oh, they can't even feed people bread. It's like, yeah, because you're fucking like have a bunch of Salafists from Turkey that are like flooding through that you're financially supporting with weapons.
Blowing up artifacts. It's not like they're there's nothing sacred. It's not like you're building beautiful artworks. Anyway, that's quite enough. But
and it kind of leads into
we're really alienating a lot of our ISIS listenership.
We have listeners in Pakistan. Is there ISIS? No, there's no ISIS in Pakistan. Sorry.
Yeah.
We don't have any listeners in ISIS region.
You
so
know, ISIS occupied territory. We're just not doing the work
Yeah.
here.
But it kind of touched on this broader like failure of the left, whatever the fuck that means, on religion. And I saw this really interesting article on conversion camps in primarily Norway and Sweden, but it's not for gay people by Christians, which like the left I think is pretty like against.
They
Like
pretty uniformly regard that as bad.
but
I think.
suddenly when it becomes Islam, like Muslims, sending their like mostly westernized or not even westernized, like Norwegianized or like Swedenized like children to like Somalia and Kenya to these Quran camps, and they're actually like conversion camps. They're indoctrination camps which have documented like torture and like not just like Islam, it's like Islamist. So I think there's a big difference. Like Islamist is
sure. This is not
Islam.
This is not your benign Bible camp.
Yeah, I don't care if like someone's Muslim. I care about like politicalizing any religion.
Well, and I this was reported in Sputnik, and I honestly I sniffed bullshit all over it. I was like, no, this cannot be real. It just had too many of the ingredients that would make it like clickbait for me in terms of like there's these sort of like do-gooder sort of vassals of the liberal state who are out of just concern for these immigrant children who they sort of manage to other by regarding them, even though they're born in fucking Norway often, or, I have a long time immigrants to Norway or children of immigrants to Norway, cannot help but regard them as foreign. Yeah. And therefore in needing of preventing the colonization of their minds or the Norwegianization of their minds. So they start, this is basically forcibly shipping them off to these camps. This is not, this is not like the parents even necessarily. This is the children don't want to fucking go.
No.
And so
the children are the ones that reported it as an issue to people. Like, cause in Norway, they have a very strong child protective services, and children actually have a relative say in a lot of this stuff, which results in like this kind of shit.
Right. So this is like, it's things like, delinquent youth basically being shipped off to these like, a Quran camp in a country which these children regard as foreign to them. They're not. It's not their fucking country.
They don't live in Somalia. They don't live.
They're Norwegian.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, the problem is all of this just had all the dimension of like, oh come on, this is right wing hysteria. I cannot believe this. And so Sputnik's reporting on a Norwegian report.
Yeah. And
it just so happens like me and Pete Buttigieg have one thing in common. I can read Norwegian.
Yeah.
So I went and actually read some of that report because I was like, this just sounds too ridiculous.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, at least, we're not investigative journalists people, but like,
no.
From my reading comprehension of Norwegian, it's at face value seems like this is really happening. And it is just a complete fucking like white savior complex thing of like, oh, you're, please let me teach you how to not be Norwegian for you are, so foreign that you have different needs and your inferior brain pan can't possibly handle being Norwegian. Fuck off.
Yeah, well, like this is the issue is I think it's probably different in a lot of Europe, but in the US this would be brushed off as like Islamophobic rhetoric. And I'm not just saying that of like, oh, like speculation. When I wrote, I think it was like last year, an article condemning or supporting Iceland's crackdown on all circumcision, which included religious circumcision, I got a ton of hate from American progressives for being like Islamophobic and anti-Semitic. And it's like, no, I don't know. That's not what it was. But like, I couldn't even touch a topic that was relative to like anything Islam.
Right. So merely being circumcised is not sufficient to speak on that particular topic. So I don't know. So I will fully accept I will fully accept the possibility that there's some like spin to this story.
Could be, yeah.
But it is not outside the realm of possibility once you start getting to like, think of the most hysterical sort of committed program of like anti-racism you can think of.
Yeah.
And just imagine what that looks like when left to its own devices. It's not doing any work for its, the people it's benevolently and just generously trying to advocate for. It's it can end up in this position where essentially you're shipping children to places they don't want to go based on effectively a kind of tenuous national origin or ethnic background.
Yeah.
And like, holy shit. Some of the quotes from the children are pretty horrifying. Things like, what is it? It's not, I think the report itself is translates as not just a holiday.
Yeah.
I think because it was explained away as, it'll be like a holiday.
It's just Quran camp.
Yeah.
Bible camp.
No, these kids are going like, this, what the fuck? Norway is my home. Like, I don't want to go. I don't want to be shipped off as a child to, Kenya or Somalia to attend an intensive religious instruction. These are kids who've been through fucking like Norwegian public schools.
An extremely secular system. Like,
I don't know.
Like,
I feel like you can. I feel like one should take some of this with a grain of salt, except to say, at least according to this particular report, I can kind of see how this would happen. And I don't know, like, as an overreaction to gay conversion therapy or something, it'd be like shipping all your fucking straight children, the children you assume to be straight, off to fucking NASCAR camp or something in rural Alabama or something. And people are going to be like, what the fuck? I don't want to go. Like, I want to hang at the mall with my friends. Like, no, darling, we're affirming your straightness. You need to go really get in touch with your NASCAR and racism heritage.
I mean, it's like no different than certain like extremist like Christian camps, which are clearly this like child abuse in another name, and you see this a lot with like gay children being like basically just legally tortured for this. But like, why is it like you should condemn all?
Yeah, you can see that on OnlyFans now.
You should, yeah. Like this is, I don't get why you can just hide behind like a phobia or something to not be able to condemn something that's just so clearly inhumane.
Well, and that's the problem, right? Is that you take an actual legacy of real antipathy and maltreatment of Muslims in the West.
Yeah.
And concern for that is like real and good. And then you misdirect it into the only fucking things you can do, which is like, wait, like these are now criticism-free spaces. Only to say like, we're not actually talking about Islam. We're not even talking about is Islam good or bad. That's just completely off the table as a topic.
No.
If you don't even have to grant the premise that there's a problem here. It's simply like, wait, is this a humane way to treat children? and
so clearly not.
And sort of in the US, right, the discourse has moved on to the point where if somebody sort of like starts screaming out Christian persecution because you say, yo, I don't think that's a nice way to treat a child, or I think this is harmful in the context of something like gay conversion therapy or something, and saying, no, this is bad. People thankfully kind of know what that is, right? They know that is crying foul or crying to the referee when you're not necessarily the victim. But unfortunately, there's a sort of a misdirected impulse to say, oh wait, there's a horrible history of xenophobia directed at particularly non-Western Muslims in this country, and therefore we simply cannot talk about anything that would veer into that territory, even though you're really talking about our like you're talking about our society. You're not talking about anybody else's society.
Yeah.
You're talking about like in American civil society, what is good or bad.
I mean, I think it's great to have like compassion and like stuff like that, which is important, but you can't let that become so over the top that you can't ever talk about issues happening in any community. Like if there's an issue going on, like you have to talk about it. Like you can't just ignore it for like woke's sake.
Well, and Speaking of not ignoring issues in communities, religious communities, there's an article that came up. It's from 2015, but for some reason it's been doing the rounds again recently.
Yeah.
By Liz Bruenig. And it's called "Is There a Christian Way to Be Gay?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's been making people getting people fired up again. I don't quite know why.
It's because they don't think she's a friend to the gays, and that's a requirement to be a socialist. And it's like, if you read the article, she's not saying anything that's like I find threatening or problem. Like
it's pretty mainline Catholic.
Yeah, I don't agree with it 'cause I'm an atheist, but I don't find it threatening. She's not calling for any like government or like social controls. It's more like the topic of can a gay, lesbian in particular, an article be a Catholic, and like what does that look like?
Well, and I don't know, as a lot of my extended family, you know, as you can imagine, being Italians, are Roman Catholic, and I feel like the sort of like the self-torture and these like deep questions that people grapple with, which honestly, if you're not Catholic, you sort of just like roll your eyes and you're like, what the fuck's the problem here? Like, wait, why is this a big deal?
This also isn't in a socialist or a leftist publication. It's in like
the American Conservative.
Yeah, it's for like religious.
Right,
people.
It's for other people who literally think these are sort of serious, deep questions to ask about like celibacy and like whether you can be a good Catholic despite your like, you know, your past indiscretions and all this shit, which honestly to me just comes off as like babble and fucking white noise. But honestly, it really feels very important to people if you believe that, you know, the creator of the literal creator of the universe is in personal contact with you. These are probably very deep and urgent questions.
Yeah.
Worthy of, you know, a decently written mid-length article in the American Conservative.
Like, I feel like it's just burning any potential bridge to bring on people to like a leftist project. Like Elizabeth Bruenig is like one of the few like socialist who's like tied into like the Catholic world and is able to have those discussions, which otherwise would just be dominated by the right wing. It's like y'all are gonna spend your time of everyone on Elizabeth Bruenig. It's all like it's like the abortion thing. Like she said explicitly like, oh, I'm not gonna ban it because like there's so many issues.
She's like, I personally would never participate in abortion, but I don't advocate legal outlawing it.
Like,
but let me be clear. In the same way that, you know, everybody's been doing this whole like, you know, what is it? The sort of the lib version of the Trump could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and like he'd still win.
Yeah.
And the people being like, oh, well, Biden could, you know, molest every single one of my children and murder my dog, and I'd still vote for him.
He could eat a baby.
Right. I would say Elizabeth Bruenig could come out as a rabid homophobe.
I don't care.
She could come and say, I believe that every gay person on earth should be sentenced to death by governments. And I would still be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool, Liz, go sit back down. To be clear, that is not her view, at least in my understanding of it. I have no reason to believe that's her view.
No.
I just take the extreme example of like, it doesn't matter what she thinks about gay people. It's not important.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect your life. There are people who have actual control over your life if you are a gay person or a person whose reproductive rights come up for political debate periodically.
Well, it's like the pink news tactic. It's like, let's talk about a bunch of extremely irrelevant like people in like the U.S. who are like Christian preachers who are like, let's put the gays in camps. Like there's like 10 of them, and it's like they don't have any political power. Like there's no chance of like that actually happening. Like
right, and if it was, then cool. There's a whole different set of tactics except getting mad at them online.
Yeah,
it does.
If they're actually doing that, that's probably when you get like your Antifa battle gear on and start like busting some skulls.
Yeah, go make good friends with the Pink Pistols, the Socialist Rifle Association in that time. This is not what's happening.
No.
And this, the problem is that people, I don't know, due to some fucking boredom, it's probably just some like Corona lockdown boredom and everyone's feeling a bit LARPy or something. But like
people hate her.
Like, the idea that you're gonna go like slay this Elizabeth Bruenig conservative dragon over like essentially an insinuation about what her personal beliefs are. And as I say, I do not care.
Yeah. Also, like, she's not from like I follow her on Twitter. She's not like saying you all must agree with me and you like all must become Catholic. Like, she's not doing any of that. Like, she spends most of her time just like talking about her like fam and like I don't know, some like basic programs and
right. She has a very similar and interpretable set of concerns that like anybody can understand. And honestly, the weird Catholic shit leaves me cold. I'm like, oh, that's weird. This seems like you're really grappling with a deep existential question here that I regard as incredibly simple, which is to say, once again, if you're worried what the creator of the universe thinks about you, then that this all, I'm sure, takes on a weight of seriousness that I just can't personally apply to it. But honestly, if that's what's getting you through the day, good for you. And writing fucking opinion pieces to other Catholics in pretty marginal fucking American conservative magazine is just not a threat to anybody. It's not a threat. Yeah, you're fine. And the article's not bad.
It's very ill-intentioned to these people. I keep bringing it up because they don't want a broad-based workers, labor, left movement. Like, turns out a lot of people religious. A lot of people probably don't agree with everyone on abortion, and that's fancy. You need to like get the fuck over and focus on the key material demands like jobs and healthcare and housing. Like stop wasting all this time on small divisions because like that's never gonna win. Like, oh, they must fully endorse my gay polycule like abortions every month. Like no, like it doesn't matter. Like leave your private to your private self. And
right, and there are grounds on which you can actually contend those questions. Yeah. Which is say there are actual people who act as structural barriers to that. Mm-hmm. It's not in the discourse the barriers are to that particular fight. There's real material stakes to that fight. Abortion is largely legal in this country, mm-hmm. but access to it is incredibly hard to come by. Well, why is that? It's not simply a question of like whether the New York Times thinks it's good or not. Or it's literally material. Yeah, and there are people who can apportion those resources, and they make decisions every day. And you're busy bitching at Elizabeth Bruenig on Twitter, and not, I don't know, making those people's lives a little harder.
You're heroes, guys. Keep doing it.
Yeah, you're doing
not our
work.
Listeners. Our listeners probably don't do that.
Our listeners don't do that.
Because you're all amazing.
They've turned it off by this point.
Yeah, they're like, shut the fuck up.
They were mad when we were bad-mouthing ISIS at this point.
So we can end on a positive note of
I love positivity.
Pure rational from the blue check marks. Was it last week or it
was last week. It feels impossibly long ago, but it was last week.
It was last week. So there was this article by, I think her name was Gia Tolentino.
That is her name.
And she wrote an article after on the Red Scare Reddit, someone pointed out that her parents were human traffickers of.
Well, let's be very, very precise with wording.
Well, that's what they said in the Reddit.
No, I understand. I want to just because it's an issue that has been loaded up with connotation for people that the sides have bifurcated to those who are like, she is personally a human trafficker and is literal human garbage, and then the people on the other side being like, well, actually, you've overstated the case. And so, to be clear, her mother and father ran an immigration business. They are Filipino expats, I believe.
Yeah.
And they were running a business that basically helped temporary Filipino workers, emphasis mine, to come to the U.S. and get visas and work in jobs like teaching and I think nursing.
Yeah.
And long story short, the government ended up issuing indictments against, I believe, mother and father
for trafficking.
For essentially, yes, defrauding the U.S. government on the conditions of these visas. And then her father went to jail.
Did he?
Yes, her father pled guilty. His father was incarcerated for quite some time.
I'm so
Her
sad.
mother, I believe, I think part of the plea deal was the mother was not implicated or sort of was left out or something. Anyway, point being, an actual conviction, you can read the court transcripts. I mean,
it was horrible. Like they had 10 to 12 Filipinos, like in a room, many of whom slept on the floor. They were in massive interest rates. I think it was like 60 to 70% for them.
Yes, they billed for the price of their own, transport to become temporary workers.
And also most of them didn't actually have guaranteed jobs. And the reason I got them in trouble was they were moving them around, like, I think, counties for different jobs. So like,
yeah, it was that they had basically issued, they'd applied for these sort of temporary work visas in a county on the basis that they would be working somewhere. Then they weren't going to be working there for reasons that are, good or bad. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then they simply sort of moved them somewhere else. And that was illegal.
But I think the thing that probably doesn't click on for a lot of people is when we hear like South Asian, like human trafficking. For one, I all think of like sex trafficking, but like now that's being attacked as like not profane either. But from a lot of people, but they think it's mostly in like Asia or it's in the Middle East, which there definitely is. Like Qatar and like Saudi Arabia have a ton of that. The U.S. has a lot of it. There's actually quite a lot of groups that are fighting against this in the U.S. There's a lot of embassies like literally lock in Filipino workers, promised special like jobs and opportunity, and turns out they just get their passports taken and stuff like that. But all the blue check marks basically were like, oh, this poor person, you're just so wronged. Like, I have some of the tweets if you want to read one of them. Oh, God,
there's so many. Yeah, there was just a parade of self-pity, which is not like, and the thing is, like, I don't expect somebody to denounce their parents, but the reaction just had it was a long piece of sort of just a parade of self-pity is the only fucking phrase I can come up with, because it just it sort of excused everything, talked about the big mean government, the people who they were profiting off in this way that honestly, even if it was legal, would be deeply unethical. It would be cruel to another human being.
Lots of immigration policy is basically just like another form of like rapid dehumanization labor. Like,
right, it's a kind of chattel slavery.
It's like just like, oh, you're not good enough for regular all the benefits, so we're gonna have a special program. Like the Filipino government's just as complicit in this because of like a long history of capitalist like colonialism and shit. So like it's a mutual relationship where they get a lot of money from like sending a lot of their labor force to the different parts of the world to be exploited.
So she wrote, she just wrote this breathless long fucking Medium piece all about how people were being really fucking mean to her.
Yeah, nothing about the workers.
Her parents were actually really good, and she was so sad about how, she didn't get to see her father, and it was really hard to drive to see him, and like how, it was all just, everyone was big meanies.
Boo-hoo, I don't care. I don't have sympathy for people like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure it was personally hard for her, but like, holy shit, I guarantee you some of your father's victims were having a much worse time.
And I'm pretty sure like people who have like serial killer fathers also have like deep sympathies for like the people being mean to them. But
I'm not cold to that human reality, but like, holy shit, maybe don't say it out loud. Like, don't say the quiet part loud.
Yeah, like keep it to yourself. Like that's what I would do. But like I have never been in that experience. I have regular parents who worked jobs and didn't traffic tons of Filipinos.
And that's why you don't have a blue check mark.
Truly. But like one of them was like, Gia, I've admired your work for a long time. Now I'll admire it more. No one should have to go through what your parents went through. I'm so sorry for all of the heartlessness.
That is heartlessness there in this case, just to be clear, is people pointing out online that her father was convicted of human trafficking offenses.
Yeah, like you admire her more for doing a horrible job of defending and completely ignoring...
Of just defending uncritically. Not saying, look, whatever happened... I still love my dad. That would like that would be an article she could have written, and she writes quite well. Like she's a compelling writer. So I don't want to like say this isn't your usual blue checkmark lib grade shit. She wrote an impassioned piece about actually how her parents did nothing wrong.
Well, this is the funny thing. I think it was Amy in her like recent episode mentions like how Twitter often has people say the thing they shouldn't say out loud.
Yes, show their whole ass.
Yeah.
I think is the
like
phrase
they're literally. It wasn't just like one or two blue check marks. I think the thing that made it so big was tons of them, including
dozens.
Like, and it were like the ones who were like women, like intersectionality and all this like shit.
Yeah, they're doing their.
And it's like, why are you all defending this? Like these people are literally showing their ass. Like they're literally defending human trafficking. And like, this isn't surprising. Like if you saw the conversation around like sex work is work, and it's originated in the libertarian discourse, is that it's a complete attack on all accusations that there's human trafficking and like sex work. And now it's just going beyond that into like, oh, teachers and nurses and like farm laborers. Like I think there was a View episode. Sharon Osbourne or what's her daughter's name?
Kelly
Osbourne literally says, if we didn't have the immigrants, who would clean our houses? Literally on air. It's like, yes, because that's what they all think. Like they don't want to do these precarity, shitty jobs. They want someone else to do it.
Well, and our friend Gia Tolentino or whatever. I mean, the reason she sort of inspired this wave of sympathy is that people recognize themselves and her. Right? There's a shared. Class solidarity exists. It's just not among the workers.
No.
And so the problem is these people are all going, wow, what if my daddy, who was, running weird payday loans and furniture rental scheme, was ripped away from me at the tender age of 28 or whatever, or what if my mother's blood testing startup resulted in SEC charges or something. Like they're terrified of that. They can relate. And so they show true human feeling and solidarity towards this person who's saying, here's this horrible thing that happened to my family. And,
they're also these people were utilizing anti-racist rhetoric to prevent anyone from condemning. And I think Dasha pointed out, like, yes, no white person's ever been human trafficked. And she's like from Belarus. And when I know about this in my Gaelic episode, like literally when all like post-socialist countries collapse, and there's a massive sex human trafficking, and it's like human trafficking of like all different sorts. Like a lot of EU jobs now are transferred to like Poland and shit because they're cheaper like jobs versus like, paying people in like Sweden for like their unions and shit. It's like, these people aren't good people. These are people that don't care about workers. And it's not because they're like bad or whatever. They probably think they're doing the right thing.
No, of course. They're just expressing completely normal feelings about like warm feelings towards your family.
They're not your comrades. They're not good.
They're
not friends to working class people. They are your enemy. And I hope they all lose their jobs.
Yeah. And with that, turn this off and go abuse a blue check mark online.
Yeah. Or more.
Do your part.
Do more. Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.